So I've been in the middle of a major life transition for the last several years, and I feel like it's reaching a tipping point. I've been sick for most of my adult life. I had severe chronic illness, and I was dealing with a lot of severe depression and, trying to cope with childhood trauma, diagnosed with complex PTSD. I had a lot of stuff I was trying to figure out. And my amazing husband, who I married 18 years ago, bless his heart, he has been the most patient, the most awesome partner to me all this time. And he actually, when I got really sick, like less than a year after we got married, he told me to just go home and take care of myself and try to get better and not to worry about working to pay the bills. And he took on that burden of being the primary breadwinner, for basically being the sole breadwinner for our entire marriage up to this point. And it's not been easy. I mean, he's not rich, and we live in a very expensive part of the country. Anyway, and I finally have felt the last few years like I'm figuring out what works for me. I finally got a diagnosis of what was actually going on with me about 6 or 8 years ago or so now. So I was finally able to start figuring things out, figuring out how to live with the body that I have and the genetic disorder that I have, and medications that work for me. Finally reached a point in my, therapy and just working on myself and stuff where I was able to start feeling better. And believe it or not, what really made the most difference? I mean, there's so many things that made little differences here and there, but one of the things that I think helped the most with dragging me out of that place of being stuck and sick and isolated and depressed, and bringing me back to the land of the living and to where I want to be part of the world and meet people and live life and not just see it pass me by. Video games. Video games saved my life, basically. And I'll go more into that in another video sometime if you're interested. But basically, having something to focus on other than my health, meeting people outside of the just fellow patients and doctors and chronic illness community, getting to know people that I had nothing in common with necessarily, other than we loved a video game. We had something positive in common rather than something negative in common, like I had with my chronic illness friends in my Facebook groups and stuff. Instead of being in groups where, those groups helped me a lot during various periods. It's because of those groups that I ended up actually getting a name for what was going on with me and finally getting a real diagnosis. Turns out I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. But staying in those groups for so long, just talking every day with fellow patients who are isolated, who are feeling sorry for themselves, who are in pain, who are miserable, started to make me feel like I couldn't really relate to healthy people, and like I had nothing in common with them, and like I would just be envious of them when I would see them and just think that they couldn't understand my life and I couldn't understand their life. And I just grew more and more isolated as the years went on. And video games was actually what pulled me out of that. Because instead of spending time in those chronic illness Facebook groups, I started hanging around on Discord with other gamers and getting to know people who also enjoyed the same dinosaur game that I was playing, Ark Survival Evolved, which is a very complicated game with a lot of complicated mechanics and doesn't give a lot of tutorials, which kind of forces some community around it because people have to find out how to do things by talking to other players. And so that's created this feeling of community as we figure things out together. And yeah, so instead of hanging around other sick people on Facebook, I was hanging around with random people, all, you know, from stay-at-home moms to people who would game after work on their regular job. There was a guy who was out of work for a few months because he'd injured his back, and without gaming he would have just been laying flat on his back feeling sorry for himself for a few months. But gaming let him go on adventures with us and have fun together. I mean, one of the friends that I met was a guy who lives in a remote part of Alaska. And for most of the year, there'd be nothing he could do outside of his house because it was dark and cold and not a whole lot of people living nearby. But because of video games, because of playing this game with us, he was able to go on adventures with us. He did his first boss fights with us. I did my first boss fights with some of the friends that I made on there as well, and it was an incredible, memorable experience. And I mean, so many people that I've met, and a lot of whom, you know, I continue to meet new people all the time and continue to make friends. I know I have friends all over the world now. I still don't have a whole lot of friends locally. I don't really have anybody I can just meet up with for coffee. I mean, it's hard to make friends in person when you have chronic illness and not a whole lot of energy. That's kind of just the reality. I would like to prioritize that more, but I mean, it's hard because real life friends move away after you've spent a lot of time and, you know, invested a lot of energy in a relationship with them, and then they just move away and stop talking to you. That's what I love about online friends, is because it doesn't matter where they live. We can still talk, we can still go on adventures together, we can still make memories together. Sometimes people drop out for a while, you know, real life stuff comes up. People don't have time to game for a while. That's normal, that's fine. And then, you know, eventually they come back. Or they just pop in the Discord now and then to just give us an update, drop a picture of a new pet, new kid, new house, whatever. I'm still in touch with a lot of these people that I've now been friends with online for like 5 years. That's what video games have done for me. It's kind of crazy, but anyway, video games are just one of the things that has changed my life. I've been on this whole crazy journey. I mean, within the past few years, like the past 3 years, especially, since I started my channel, actually, my main YouTube channel, which is focused on video games. I started that 3 years ago. Well, maybe closer to 4 now, but anyway, I've lost 60 pounds, and that did not happen by accident. It wasn't because of the video games, but sometime I do want to make a video, something like, I lost 60 pounds without giving up video games. Because that's what I see a lot of videos on, you know, people go, oh, I quit video games and got my life together. You know, I quit video games and social media and figured out my life and got my life back on track. Well, I'm getting my life back on track without giving up video games, because you know what? Video games can be an awesome, healthy habit that can do so much good for us and so much good in the world. And so I'm excited that I can make all these positive differences in my life, like changing my diet, changing my relationship with food, learning how to pay attention to the calories and things, and put limits on myself, and getting myself back to a more healthy weight. I still have a ways to go. I'm still not exactly where I'd like to be, but I know that I can get there. And I'm moving a little slower now because I want to get there in a healthier way. I don't want to continue to count calories for the rest of my life. So I'm trying to find an equilibrium just based on eating healthy food and, you know, portion control and stuff like that. But anyway, I've had to, obviously, losing 60 pounds, I've had to completely overhaul my wardrobe. I had a couple of things that I kept from when I was younger and thinner, and they fit me again now. I'm wearing clothes that I hadn't worn for 15 years, which is an incredible feeling. More than 15 years, in fact. I think some of these things I hadn't worn for like 17 years, probably. I'm de-junking my house now. Now that's the big project I'm working on, because my husband and I we're moving. And that's what's really causing, I think, a massive change in my life. This feeling of being on the cusp of something new. And I don't want to bring all the old junk that I've been hauling around for so long. I don't want to bring all of that into my new life. I want to move forward, leaving the past in the past, which isn't easy. I'm a sentimental person, and I have a lot of stuff from my past. I might make videos about going through some of that stuff and kind of processing some of that. I don't know. I mean, in this channel, I'm just planning on making videos about real life stuff as opposed to video game stuff. And I don't know if anybody's going to be interested in watching any of it or not. But at the end of the day, I'm mostly doing it for myself. Because making videos is cheaper than therapy. And because, you know what, sometimes I feel like it's a way of forcing myself to be honest, forcing myself to explain my thoughts, helps me to be more aware of what I'm thinking and feeling. And so that's kind of what I'm working on now. Going through stuff, getting rid of stuff, paring stuff down, getting rid of 18 years. I mean, heck, some of the clutter that I have is stuff that I've been dragging around since I was a child or a teenager. But I'm starting to address now, you know, how some of these things make me feel. And some of it is reminders of times in my life that I don't want to forget them. But I also don't want to relive them all the time. I want to acknowledge the person I became through the tough times. And I want to move into the future rather than being chained to the past. So, I'm getting rid of a ton of stuff. Let me show you some of the stuff I'm getting rid of. And this is just the latest batch. I've already taken like 2 carloads or more to the donation center and sold a ton of stuff on Facebook Marketplace. But yeah, this is a bunch more stuff that I'm getting rid of. Some of it I have listed on Facebook Marketplace and I'm hoping it sells, but if it doesn't, I'm just going to donate all of it.
These shelves used to be stuffed full, and now, they look half empty. There's still more on there that I need to sort through and get rid of, but I've made a good start at it. I need to pare down my Christmas decorations and Halloween decorations. It looks like I've got about 3 bins of each. And I want to pare that down to maybe one for each holiday, maybe 2 at the most. Because, yeah, we're going to be moving into a smaller space. My husband lost his job in January, and that was a massive trauma to him as our sole breadwinner. And the fact that it came very suddenly and unexpectedly. They didn't give him any kind of warning that it was coming. And then he was just, boom, laid off. And he'd been doing great, had a team of people that he really loved working with. He was a manager and he really loved his team. And then just all of a sudden it was just gone. And it took 5 months to find another job. And that was difficult for both of us, as you can imagine. He's had to do a lot of work on his identity, figuring out who he is without his job. And I've, in a way, it's been refreshing. In a way, it's been good for me to feel like I'm the one emotionally supporting him for a change. Because for most of our marriage, I feel like he's been the one carrying all the weight for both of us. And it feels good to be able to take care of him and repay that a little bit. I'm also working part-time now myself. Having been sick for so long, I don't have a career really to fall back on. And I have a lot of skills and I have a lot of things I'm good at and things I can do, but not a lot of qualifications or things that look good on a resume. And so I'm kind of doing odd jobs here and there. I've got a family that I'm tutoring their kids, and I'm freelancing online mostly for different things in the gaming community, just some of the contacts that I've made there, some marketing, some creative work of various kinds. And I've been tightening the belt big time. I grew up very poor. I grew up more poor than a lot of people in the United States can even relate to right now. Because, I was born in 1980. I'm 46 years old now. And so I was a teenager in California in the 90s. And people assume that they know what that looks like or that means, right? But I didn't grow up in that world, actually. I spent the entire decade in a subculture of Christian fundamentalism. I was homeschooled. I was taking care of eventually became 9 younger siblings. And I didn't really participate in mainstream culture for basically the entire decade. And if you could imagine 10 kids on a blue-collar income, let's just say that talking about things from childhood, especially after my family moved to Idaho when I was 15, I relate more to elderly people who talk about growing up during the Great Depression. I know what that kind of childhood feels like. I don't know what a typical 90s California childhood feels like. At least not after age 10 or so, when my parents joined the fundamentalist group. But yeah, I mean, I've been so poor that I only had 2 pairs of shoes, one for every day and one for church. I've been, I know how to cook from scratch, and when I say scratch, I don't mean from cans. I mean literally from 50-pound sacks of rice and dry beans. I mean, like, really from scratch. But I learned a lot of skills that a lot of people nowadays don't know. And so I'd love to share some of that kind of stuff on this channel as well. Some of the money saving hacks that I'm now rediscovering and starting to use again as I'm trying to save money, because my husband got a new job now, but it is a pay cut from the last one by a good 20% or more. And so we need to learn to live on less. And already just changing my habits, cooking from scratch more, I already feel like we're starting to live better on less than we were before. And I'm excited about this new chapter of our lives. I'm not afraid of it. I'm excited to move into a new place and get to set it up and get to leave behind some of this clutter and cobwebs of the past and move into a new chapter where I'll be focusing on building healthier habits and just really learning how to be and do everything that I can to live the most abundant life. On less money, with less space, with less time, because I need to contribute financially as well. But I'm excited about it because I'm sick of being sick, and I'm sick of staying home and feeling sorry for myself and being isolated from the world. I'm excited to continue to rejoin the land of the living and just learn how to live again. Just learn how to be a healthy adult. So anyway, that's about it for now.